So, und jetzt, er war einer der jüngsten Professoren für Ökonomie, Professor in Australien, Professor in London. Ja, das muss man mal sagen. Nur einfach den Namen hier zu nennen. Nein, er ist Professor, Doktor, das ist mir nie vergönnt gewesen. Und jetzt kommt der Finanzminister. Sie haben ja beide was gemeinsam. Beide waren, das böse Fernsehen hat das vorhin gefragt, der eine war 100 so und so, 300 so und so viel oder 200 so und so viele Tage und der andere ungefähr gleiche Zeit Finanzminister. Und beide haben ja auch gemerkt, wie stark die Finanzmärkte sein können. Oder das, was man Finanzmärkte kennt. In Russland nennt man das Finanzoligarchen, aber bei uns heißt das Finanzmärkte. Ist aber ungefähr dasselbe. Also, jetzt viel gutes Zuhören bei Professor Dr. Yannis Varoufakis.
I feel like a citizen of Hannover today, and it feels very good. Thank you for having me here. Now, fellow citizens of Hannover, have you noticed that every time capitalism has a crisis, a big one, our three countries, Deutschland, España, and Greece, get caught very seriously in the web of that crisis. Capitalism had two big crises, 1929 and 2008. Remember what happened after 1929? Wall Street collapsed. What happened in 2008? Wall Street collapsed. What happened after 1929? The crisis in Europe, it was begun as a crisis of the common money we had, the common currency, the gold standard back then. 2008, the common currency, the euro, which was created as a copy of the gold standard, started fragmenting. And after 1929, 1930, when the common crisis and the common currency got under pressure, proud European nations turned against each other. Germany against France, against Greece, against Spain, the international brigades, against the Middle Eastern people, the Jews. What happened after 2008 and the currency crisis of the euro? Proud Europeans started turning against each other. The Germans being told that it was the fault of the Greeks. The Greeks being told that it was the fault of the Germans. Everybody hating the French. The Spaniards getting caught in. We're not learning the lesson, are we? We are repeating history and not as a farce, as Marx said. The other day, I heard Wolfgang Schäuble complain about Mario Draghi, the president of the European Central Bank. He was complaining that Mario Draghi's policy of printing 80 billion euros every month was killing the pension funds in this country. So pensioners, good, hard-working Germans could not look forward to a retirement because the pension funds were crushed by the very low negative interest rates caused by Draghi. Schäuble is right on this, except that Draghi, the way he's constrained, fenced in by a wall that Schäuble built, that's the only thing he can do to save the euro. When I went to the first Eurogroup, why did I go to the Euro? Why was I elected? Do you think that the Greek LINKE Syriza suddenly became very popular because the Greeks became communists? No. It's because we collapsed. Because we lost 30% of our national income. That's why we were elected. And I went to the Eurogroup in front of Schäuble to say, you know what? This policy you've been applying in Greece for 6 years, 5 years, has failed. Clearly. No economic policy has failed more than this in the history of capitalism. No, none. This is the greatest failure of any attempt to resuscitate, to recover a capitalist economy. 6 years, a third of the income gone, unemployment from 8 to 28. So why don't we sit down and we look at your proposals, you look at our proposals, and we'll work something out. That was the very radical idea that I had. Huh? You know what Schäuble said? Verbatim. Elections cannot be allowed to change the economic policy of Greece. And I said, this is the greatest gift to the Chinese Communist Party. Because they think so too. Now you know why they didn't like me very much. Yeah. So democracy gets crushed because the economic policies fail, but because there is no way of changing them democratically, they impose the same policies with more authoritarianism and less democracy. And there is a downward spiral. More authoritarianism, greater failure, more crisis, more authoritarianism, more of the same policies, more crisis. And this is how Europe is spinning out of control. In September, I wrote an article in one of your newspapers, FAZ, in which I said that I feel proud of Angela Merkel for her stance on Syrian refugees when she said, we are opening our doors. I meant it. I don't care what her motives were. I was pleased to see her say that. What has happened ever since? A few weeks ago, months ago, the German government, the Austrian government, the French government asked President Erdogan of Turkey to open the border of Syria and Turkey to let the Syrian refugees from Aleppo into Turkey. That's fine. At the same time, they threatened the Greek government that if they don't close the border with Turkey, the Greek-Macedonian border will be closed, and Austro-Hungarian troops, I meant Austrian troops. I went back a few years. Austrian troops went to that border to stop, to seal off another European country, because we dared let the Syrians in. After that, we had the scandalous treaty that Mrs. Merkel proposed, according to which the Greeks will have to deport to Turkey the refugees and have Turkey deal with them, sort them out, and treat them. A country which is under a newly established dictatorship, a country which lives under a president who orders the police into newspapers, gets rid of the editors, and the next day the same newspaper comes out with headlines in favor of the president. A country that has refused to sign international legislation on the treatment of refugees. So what happened to Mrs. Merkel? It's the same thing that happened to Dr. Schäuble. We have created a European Union establishment which is inhuman because it is inefficient. And it is inefficient because it is inhuman. The other day, a famous satirist who satirized me at my great expense is being investigated because President Erdogan of Turkey asked your authorities to investigate him. What's happening to the Federal Republic of Germany? In ancient Greece, we had festivals, holy festivals, with ancient comedy, tragedy, various rituals, taking the mickey, as the English say, poking fun at the rulers using offensive language against the rulers, using big fallacies and all sorts of insulting props in order to allow themselves to look at themselves in a critical light. And here in Europe, because we want to bribe President Erdogan to allow us to break international laws on refugees, we are going to prosecute a satirist in Germany. Citizens of Hannover, what we have is a repetition of the 1930s. We had a terrible architecture of our economy, which led to a crisis, started in Washington, sorry, not Washington, I apologize to DC, in New York, came over to Europe, just like in the 1930s, and started fragmenting us. So what do we do to stop this? Well, how about a bit of common sense? We should do with the Eurozone that which we hadn't done in the first place. Have a way of recycling our surpluses and our debts. We should immediately create a common fund for fighting poverty in Hannover, in Lisbon, in Madrid, everywhere. We can fund it using the profits of the European system of central banks. I mentioned before that Dragi is trying to save the euro, and he has saved it by printing 80 billion. What happens to this 80 billion? He buys bonds with it, destroying your pension funds. What, instead of that, why don't we have the European Investment Bank do a Green New Deal for Europe, issuing its own bonds, and Draghi can buy those? You don't have to be the LINKE to say that. This is just common sense. It's just even liberal sense. But we have reached the stage when only the radical left can come up with common sense ideas. Just to finish off, people ask me, what should we do with the refugees? The answer was given by an old 90-year-old Greek woman near Idomeni. Journalists went to her farmhouse, a very modest, poor farmhouse, because they found out that she had 5 refugees living in there. And they said to her, what have you done? How did they come in there? What happened? And she said, she was trembling a bit, 91. She said, they were hungry and I let them in and I fed them. This is what we should do with refugees. Europe is rich enough, large enough, powerful enough to deal with this problem in one day. Greece in 1991 allowed into its territory, when the Iron Curtain came down, 1 million refugees. 1 million. We are a country of 10 million. You know what happened? Nothing. But they're still there. I can't tell the difference at the university between children who were born to these people and Greeks. They speak Greek with the same accent. There is a difference in the spelling of their names. That's all. Greece is better off for having had them. Europe would be better off for letting these people in. Period. In the last few months, some of us, Diether is one of them, just he's crazy enough. What? We've joined together to create what we call the Democracy in Europe movement, DM25.
All right.
We are thinking in purely internationalist European terms. We want to stop the disintegration of Europe, because that disintegration will create a new 1930s. We want to create European international brigades everywhere. I don't come here to ask for your solidarity for Greece. I'm asking you for your solidarity for Europe, for Germany, for Spain, for Greece, for all of us. And primarily for yourself. People People say to me, but Europeans are so different. The Germans, they are very different from us Greeks, and the Portuguese are different to the Hungarians. Well, I lived in Texas. You want to go to Texas? You will feel European, and you will feel you're very close to the Greeks and to the Portuguese and to the Hungarians. Just spend 1 year in Texas. But they say to me, but you know, our country, our fatherland is, you know, it can't be European. Yes, it can. Allow me to try this without translation. Heimat ist kein Ort. Heimat ist ein Gefühl. Thank you.